So today we have a short video on how to prepare your CV. Now, your CV is one of the most important things you need to concentrate on because it's the first point of contact that the employer has with you. Sometimes the first time the employer sees the CV is just before your interview, so quite often it can lead into interview questions and they might ask you things about your CV. The first principle with a CV is to keep it simple and to keep it as short as possible. So a new graduate CV could be around 2 pages and a nurse with more experience should be a maximum of around 3 pages. Many employers like to have a picture of you on the CV, and this is purely because they might interview up to 30 nurses over 2 days, and then when they get back to the UK they take your CVs with them and they like to have a reminder of who you are because they interview so many nurses. So put a professional picture on your CV and then put your personal details at the top. So you would have your name, your address, your date of birth and your contact telephone number and email. Sometimes when we send them to employers, we'll take all your personal information out so that they only have your name, but you should provide us with a CV with all these details on. The other thing is that it should always be in English, and you must make sure that you spell check and that you grammar check and get somebody else to proofread your CV. It's very important. You can find many template CVs on the internet, and we also have our own template CV, which includes all the important parts that you need to put in on your CV. The first part on our template CV is a summary about yourself, or personal statement. So here you can put about how you are a nurse, whether you're a new graduate, what your experience is, or what your motivations are for moving to the UK. It's always nice to personalise your CV for the job that you've applied for. So say, for example, you've applied for a job in a nursing home. In your personal statement or the summary, you should say that at the moment your career goal is to work in a nursing home and why you want this job. The next part of your CV should include your education and training. And really all you need to put on this is anything that's significant. So if you're a new graduate, you can put all your internships on there, and it's quite useful to put the number of hours you spent in each area. And the reason for this is that quite often the 4-year degrees and the 3-year degrees have more clinical hour training than the nurses do in the UK. And the hospital might not understand that. So if you've worked 450 hours, for example, in theatres, then that's quite significant if you're then applying for a theatre position. So put down all of your clinical teaching practices and how many hours you've spent in each area. You can also put any extra courses that you've done, whether it's advanced life support courses, whether you've done, for example, a master's degree in infection control or anything else. So put your most recent first and then work your way down. You don't necessarily need to put about your secondary school education or your primary school education. Just put what's significant to this job. You could also add any seminars that you've been to or any other specific training courses, but you don't need to add every half-day seminar or half-day conference that you've been on, because otherwise it will just give too much information on the CV and it will be too long. The next section on your CV should be about your working experience, and it should be your most recent employer first, and then it be in chronological order. So the good thing to do about your work experience is to put where your work experience is, so the name of the hospital or the name of the clinic or care home, and the dates that you've worked there, and then underneath a brief description of your roles and responsibilities and what that job entailed. Again, you don't need to put every short work experience placement on your CV, but anything that's significant you should include. Also, if you've got any gaps in employment, you should explain those gaps. So if you've had, for example, 18 months of unemployment, or you've had 18 months of maternity leave or something else, then you should include the dates and a short description as to why you had a gap in employment. Work experience that's not healthcare related doesn't necessarily need to be on your CV, but if it was a significant amount of time that you spent doing that job, then you should include it. If you've been a volunteer for some time, so for example in the Red Cross or as part of the fire service or the ambulance service, then you can include that because it is relevant. Additional information you can include on your CV are about your personal skills and competencies. So if you've got other skills such as good IT skills, first aid, life support, anything like that, you can include it in there. And it's also interesting to put about your languages. We know that some nurses probably speak 2 or 3 languages, and you should put your level of proficiency of your language on your CV. You can assess your level of language on the internet. So we work in a system of A1 to C2, and you can assess your language and put that on the CV. You can also put at the bottom your references, your referees, or you can simply just put references available on request. We have a CV template for a new graduate nurse, and we also have a CV template for a more experienced nurse. So if you require that, you can email one of the recruitment consultants. On our next video, we're going to show you examples of an interview that is conducted poorly and an interview that is conducted well, so that we can talk through do's and don'ts during your interview.